So I've got a bunch of slides to talk to you about helping you get clear on your niche, and also about how to position yourself so that your clients really understand the value that you're bringing, which of course is more important than ever. But I want to make sure that the session is useful for all of you. So please do drop any comments into the chat, or if you're not sure about something I'm saying, or you're not sure how to apply it to your own business, then just drop a comment in and I will try and answer the questions as we go along. And as Kieran said, we've also got some time at the end for Q&A as well. So let me just tell you a bit about what we're going to cover today. So I want to start off by giving some context to the whole value selling, value pricing, and the clients valuing us. And I think I need to give some context to that before we jump in. So I want to talk about why having a niche is so important and why it's even more important than ever right now. And if we all agree with that, which hopefully you will after I've spoken about that, then I want to spend a bit of time talking to you about how to identify your target niche if you haven't already done so. And that once you've done that, you can then start to really understand your clients. And when you really understand your clients, you can understand what they're buying from you and how to position yourself. And that will lead us into talking about value pricing and value selling, which is something I am super passionate about and go on about all the time. So if anybody's selling hours, then that is the complete opposite of value pricing and value selling. And I think it would be remiss of me to not spend a bit of time in today's session talking about how to serve our audience in the current climate. So I just want to share with you some thoughts around that. Not that I'm some super expert about surviving in a pandemic, but I have had a bunch of very similar questions from my clients that I've been supporting them with that I want to share with you as well. And then, as Kieran said, we'll have some time for Q&A. Now, to make this really easy for you, I've created a web page on my website where you'll be able to grab all of the content that I mentioned today. So that's a copy of the slides plus a bunch of ebooks and templates and guides. So obviously take some notes, but I'll give you that link at the end so that you'll be able to grab a copy of that. So before we jump into the detail, let me tell you a little bit about who I am, because you may or may not know me. So I'm Rob, and I've been running my coaching practice for the last 14 years now. And what I basically do is help agencies grow, and I help them become more profitable. And I do that by working with the owners, and if they have staff, also working with the staff. And really important point about this is that I want my clients to enjoy the ride. We all get very fixated on the destination, being £1 million business or whatever that destination is, but sometimes we forget to enjoy the journey. And I deliver this by doing one-to-one coaching, by working with teams to help them work more effectively together. And I do some classroom-based training, and also, well, not at the moment, obviously, and also some online learning tools as well. And just a little bit of my journey to tell you what got me to this point, just so that you understand that I'm kind of really get where you guys have been from. So in 1992, I was the marketing manager for a software company, and I felt like we couldn't find a really good marketing agency to support us. So in my arrogant, naive youth, I left that business and I started my own PR company called CIT PR. And we grew that business over the next 11 years. And in the year 2000, PR Week named as the fastest growing agency outside of London. I got completely fed up with doing it, which is a whole other story. So in 2002, I sold the business to a large US agency. And then after 2-year earnout, I left there and started to retrain to become a coach. And then in 2007, I started Da Costa Coaching. By the end of 2018, I'd worked with over 250 agencies. And then in 2019, I launched my online coaching program, which was a way for me to reach a larger audience. Now, a couple of interesting things about that. First of all, in 1992, we were right in the middle of the Gulf War, and we were deep in recession, and that's when I started my agency. So I kind of learned how to survive in a recession. And then rather stupidly in 2007, 2008, I started my coaching business. And of course, we went into the financial crash in 2008, and I survived that. So not that I'm any expert in getting through a pandemic, but I have kind of survived similar situations to this. So today there's sort of 4 focus areas that I want to look at. So I want to talk about niching your agency and why that's so important. I want to talk about how to identify your ideal target client. I want to talk about selling and pricing on value, not on time or fixed project fees. And then finally, I want to talk about how to serve your clients in the current climate. Now, when I ran my agency, we did loads of things wrong. We sold on day rates, which is a really bad idea. I just didn't know any of the things that I know now. But one thing that we got right was that we had a really clear niche. And from day one, we were a PR agency that focused on the tech sector. In fact, we started out really niche, PR and only software. And then after a year, a partner came on board and he had a hardware background. So we diversified from software to hardware in the B2B space. And then over time, we moved that out into the consumer space as well. But we were always tech focused. So we always had really good clarity on that. And that served us really well, because when we came up against the generalist agency in a pitch, for example, we would usually have the advantage over them. So let's move on to talk a bit more about niching. And first of all, before we jump into the details of how to go about niching, I want to spend some time just discussing why this topic is so important for your business. And as I said earlier, why it's so important right now. So at the moment, we really need to make sure that we are truly serving our audience. Yet if we don't know our audience intimately well, how can we do that besides using the kind of cliched platitudes that so many people use in their sales and marketing? And that isn't going to cut it right now. Now, if we have really good clarity of who we are, because we're clear about our niche, we're clear about what we do and what we don't do, and therefore we're clear about what we sell, we can make really good business decisions. So business decisions about, should I take that client on? Should I branch out into that area? But if we're trying to be a generalist, it's really difficult to make those decisions. A clear niche means that you can produce products and services. And when I use the word product, interchange that with services that you know your audience wants, because you really understand your audience. I'm just triple checking. Yeah, everybody's. It's a bit weird because I sound like I'm talking to myself, so I want to make sure everyone's still here. And then a niche provider will always be able to charge more than a generalist. And this is a really important point. If you needed knee surgery, would you go to your GP for that surgery, or would you go to a specialist knee surgeon? Well, of course you go to a specialist knee surgeon, because you believe straight away that he or she had much more experience, knew exactly what they were doing, and therefore you would trust them almost instantly. And of course, the knee surgeon is going to charge a lot more money for that knee surgery than the GP would. And exactly the same is true in our agencies as well. Now, when we understand our niche, it means we can clearly define our target customer. And when we really understand our target customer, we can we understand the specific needs and challenges that they have. And that means that we can create truly differentiating USPs, so unique selling points, or the messages that we give out to the market will not be those cliched messages like, we go the extra mile, we really care, we are honest and trustworthy, because those are not USPs. Those are just things that everybody would say. So I always say to my clients, look, if you're trying to build your marketing messages or your sales messages and you're saying things like that, ask yourself, would all my competition say this? And if the answer is yes, then it isn't a USP. It's just it's a waste of space. It's a waste of real estate on your website, for example. So you have to ask yourself, what are the things that truly make my business different to others? And those are the things that you want to get out there. And you can't do that unless you have a clear niche and a clear understanding of your target customer. And when you do have all of that, it means you can create really engaging messages and really powerful content that will engage with your audience. So I'm going to talk a bit more about, how to define your audience in a minute, but I hope that's clear to everybody. And if you are, for example, a generalist WordPress web designer, then it's really difficult to look different to anybody else, because there's so many people that are doing that as well. So, how do you go about niching what you do and working out what that sweet spot is, which is where you can do great work for your clients and you're going to win them. So let's just move on to talk about defining your niche. So your niche is going to be the intersection of these three areas. So it's going to be the intersection of of money, where you get great results, and where your passion lies. And if you identify that intersection of those three areas, then it allows you to build a sustainable business where you can deliver great results for your clients. You can earn fair fees, and most importantly, perhaps you're going to enjoy the work that you do. So you need to ask yourself three questions if you're grappling with this, which I know a lot of people do. Like when I let me just tell you a little bit about my coaching to help you understand this. So when in 2007, when I started Da Costa Coaching, I started out being a generalist business coach. So in theory, that meant one day I could go and work with Barclays Bank, and then the next day I could go and work with a small marketing agency, for example. But I didn't have a compelling story to tell the big corporates because I didn't have tons of experience there. And then if I went to a prospect who was a small startup and they said, well, who else do you work with? And I said, oh, I work with Barclays Bank. They'd immediately be thinking, well, you're not going to be able to help me because the challenges I have are going to be so different to Barclays. And guess what? I didn't win any of those clients. So I was really starving for sort of 18 months before I decided to niche my business. And it felt like a big scary story to make, or a big scary decision to make that choice to niche, but in hindsight it wasn't at all. And for me it was easy to work out where my niche was because I have big agency background. It's I enjoy working with SMEs because I can make a big difference quicker there's less bureaucracy. So for me it was quite easy to work out the sweet spot in these three areas, even though I didn't have tons of experience. And that's an important point. I was doing a webinar a while ago where we were talking about this, and a few people were saying to me, yeah, but Rob, I don't have a long track record, or I'm new, or I'm just starting my business. How do I work this out? Because I can't do an analysis of all my clients. It doesn't really matter. You can look back on your past experience, as I did when I was making my choices. And if you're struggling around how niche to go, or you're worried about niching down, then you just have to have an honest conversation with yourself. Like for me, it was like, oh, if I niche, what about all those other opportunities that I won't win? And it's like, yeah, but Rob, how many of those other opportunities you're actually winning? And the truth was I wasn't winning any of them. So it wasn't a hard decision. So the questions you want to ask yourself are, first of all, and you can do some analysis of this, you literally sit down and look at your past clients. Which part of my business is most profitable? So like I say, do some analysis, go back through your books, look at the clients where they got you, where you didn't have to massively over-service them, where they valued what you did. Those are the clients where you're going to have done your most profitable work. What kind of group then? What do they look like? Then talk about the next stage is to do some analysis on the customers where you feel you got the best results for them. They felt really happy. You felt like you made an impact. So do some analysis on that, and that's going to help you subset those first two sections. And then the third question to ask yourself is, which area do I enjoy working the most in? Because when we do work where we're really passionate and we enjoy, we are going to naturally get better results. So I would do some analysis on your past clients and look at the intersection of those three areas to work out that sweet spot, the white area of your target niche. And if you're struggling to work out how niche to go, then drop a question about that in the chat and we'll discuss it. The other thing is to bear in mind that you can cut your niche a number of ways, and I think people get kind of only see it in a one-dimensional way, but it's not a one-dimensional way. You can cut it, obviously the obvious ones, you can cut it by sector. So I work in financial services, I work in manufacturing, that's an obvious one. You can cut it by service or offering. So I'm a PR company, I'm a web company, I'm a PPC company, I'm a digital agency. You can cut it by geography. So I'm a digital agency that works for financial services in the Southeast. And you can cut it by pain that you're solving. And I'm going to talk more about pain later because this is really, really important. So you might say, I am a digital agency that works in financial services in the Southeast, and I help companies generate more leads because their pain point is they don't have enough leads. So you can cut it all four of those ways, or one of those ways, or it's like a combination of any of them. So when you're thinking about your niche, think of it that you can cut it those four ways, not just by the obvious one, which is by what I do. So if you're a WordPress web development company, then that's your offering. you might have found that your sweet spot is working, like I say, with financial services. And you might think that actually what we do is we create really interactive websites. So that's the pain that we're going to help, that we're going to create really engaging websites that help your customers, stay on the page. And you may choose to do it by geography. The obvious one would be that we work with UK companies, but you may not. So that's just some thoughts around niching. And once you've worked out the niche, the next thing you need to do is make sure that you are aligned. And I'm going to ask for some chat here. So I'll try and switch between screens so I can hear your answers, because I want people to, normally I would draw this on a whiteboard and I'd get the audience to interact with me. So I want to ask you some questions about this. So we're going to look at your business from 4 ways. We're going to look at the market you serve. So that's your customer base. We're going to look at the product that you deliver. So that could be web design or PPC or PR or whatever. We're going to look at the service level that you provide your clients. So that's how, what's your SLA with the client. And then we're going to look at the price that you charge. And we're just simply going to fill in each of these, this table by putting an up arrow, meaning that I'm targeting the top end of the market, the horizontal line, meaning I'm targeting the mid market, or the down arrow, mean I'm targeting the low end of the market. And we're going to make absolutely no judgment about which of those things you're going to target. But before we go into look at your business, let's just, and it would be good if you've got a pen and paper to actually do this for your own business, but let's just start off by looking at airlines. And I do this with supermarkets, but let's just do this with airlines. So can you just put in the chat, so which market is Ryanair and EasyJet targeting? Are they targeting the top end market? So this is, and we're always comparing ourselves to the competition here. So are they targeting the top end market? Are they targeting the mid market? Or are they targeting the low end market? So I am just going to check in chat. So low, low, low. Yep. Anybody else want to share their thoughts on, yeah. Okay. So yeah, low, someone's put low to mid, which is fair point. So, but just for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to say low end. Now, what's their product? So that's the plane, the food and all that stuff. What is that? Are they targeting the top end, mid or low end market? Just drop your thoughts in chat again. Thanks guys who are playing along. It makes me feel like I'm not just talking to myself when I get thoughts from people. So yeah, low, mid, yeah, mid, yeah, mid and low. Interesting. It's a really interesting one, because if I'd have done this exercise like 8 years ago, it would have been really easy. Like similarly, if I did this exercise with Lidl and Aldi 8 years ago, it would have been really easy, but it's getting a bit more confusing. But for the sake of this exercise, we're going to say their predominant market, the predominant product is low. What about their service levels? So this would be like the check-in experience, the boarding experience, the experience you get on the plane. Are they targeting mid, level or low end market? Just again, drop your comments into the chat. I'm just going to check them. Yeah, so low, predominantly mid, low to mid. Yeah, I'm interested to know if some of you think, yeah, Charlotte, I agree with that one. If some of you think, yes, Kieran, God, Ryanair stranded me once. I'd never fly with them again. They literally cancelled the plane and they said, bad luck, the airport's closed and now you're stuck. And I was in the middle of Spain, so I'd never fly with them again. So I'm interested, the people that have said mid, I'm interested to know what they think. Yeah, what they think low is. Anyway, so the service level is definitely low, and the price compared to their competitors, how does their pricing stand compared to every other airline? Is it mid, high or low? Again, just drop your comments in. Yeah, low, low, low. Yeah, low. Great. Okay, so that is low. So now guess what, guys? Because they are aligned, they get a big tick in the box, which means that they are super profitable because they have an aligned business. Let's just do the same exercise now for British Airways. So what about British Airways market? Who are they targeting? Are they targeting the top end market, the middle market, or the low end market for flights? Just drop your thoughts into the chat. Ben, exactly. Ben's typed who knows. Yeah, used to be high. Yep. Everybody. Yep. Mid to high. So I think what we can agree here is it's pretty confusing, right? And, you know, depending on our own personal experience of flying on BA, they, you know, it could be high, mid, but I've just put high in for this. What about their product? That's experience that you have on the plane. You know, what's that like? Is it high end? And again, we're comparing it to, you know, all the airline industry. High, mid, or low? What would you say? Checking the chat again. High, mid, depends on what class. Yeah, that's true. Mid to high. Don't know. No. Oh, well, you've done well, Martin. Last time I flew with British Airways, I was going to South Africa and they lost my luggage and I had no clothes for 5 days. And all they offered me was £100 to buy some clothes. So I've certainly got an opinion about that. Anyway, so I've put their product is mid-level rather, because it's, you know, certainly not like Emirates or Etihad or Singapore Airlines. What about their service? So this is the experience you're going to get from boarding, checking in, and also on the plane. What would you say their service level is? Mid to high, mid. Okay, good. Everybody seems to agree. Again, depends on class. That is very true. I've put, I don't really know. My personal experience is low because, like I say, they lost my luggage. And what about their price? How does their price compare to the competition? So that would be comparative to the, you know, the airlines like Etihad, but also the Ryanairs of this world. What's their price like? Fairly high, mid to high, changes a lot. Yeah. Mid. Okay, great. So I think I'm making my point fairly well here, or you're making my point for me. And that is that British Airways are not aligned across these 4 areas. And as a consequence, they get a big cross in the box, because that means that they are not competitive. So they are way less profitable than Ryanair and EasyJet. And everybody kind of has their stories about, say, Ryanair, how they want to charge you for absolutely everything, including, I don't know, water or going to the toilet or something. But the thing is, they're really clear about their business model. And so, you know, if you want to get a no frills, low cost flight, then you fly on Ryanair, and you can't expect anything in terms of the product or the experience, the service. But because they're clear about that, and like I said, no judgment, then they're clear of the market they're targeting, then they're very profitable. Whereas British Airways, you know, if we did this exercise 8 years ago, everybody would have put an up arrow against British Airways, because they were a leading airline. They were, in the flight industry's view, a tier 1 airline, whereas now they're a tier 2 airline. And they've lost the plot, and partly they've lost the plot because they've been trying to compete with the EasyJets of this world. So they offer, you know, the sort of lower cost trips where you have to pay for your baggage and buy food and all the rest of it. And, you know, it damages their brand. I don't know if you all remember, but many years ago, there was a low cost airline called Go. And Go was British Airways' attempt to join the low cost airlines when EasyJet first came about. And I flew to Spain on a Go ticket once, but it was a BA plane. And I sat next to somebody who had a BA ticket. And I thought to myself, I've paid £30 for this flight. You've probably paid £200, £300 for this flight. And this has to be damaging your brand. And in the end, BA sold Go to EasyJet because they realized it was damaging their brand. And we could do the same exercise with supermarkets, because the Lidls and the Aldis of this world were targeting the low end and are very profitable. And the Sainsbury's and Tesco's are confused with their kind of exclusive brands and their, you know, blue label brands. They're very confusing because they're trying to be all things to all people. And that's the moral of this story. So if you just grab a sheet of paper, I'd just be really interested to know, think about your business and think about, are you aligned? Where would you put yourself for market? So that's who you're targeting, how good your product or service is. Is it a high-end product, a mid product, or low-end product? What's the service levels that you give your clients? And what is your price point? And this is always in comparison to your competition, to your marketplace. So if you have any views on this, or if you're brave enough to share it, then just drop it in the chat. But just spend a couple of moments just drawing your own alignment and see, you know, see how whether you feel you're aligned. I'd be really interested to know if anybody feels they are aligned, or where they feel perhaps they've got it slightly wrong. And I'll tell you a story in a minute about why this is so important. Okay, Ben said it's too early for me to say. Okay, fair enough. Market refers to the marketplace that you're servicing, so the people that you're targeting. So if you were Etihad, for example, you would be targeting a market that is an affluent market that would be willing to pay £1,000 for, well, not 1,000, but maybe £800 for an economy ticket. Whereas obviously Ryanair would not be targeting that market. They'd be targeting people who have less income, who would want to spend £30. So that's what market means. Any other comments before I share with you my thoughts on this? Okay, so I'm not a mind reader, but I suspect that what a lot of people would do is this. So I've just used a fictitious company. And when I've done this work with clients before, we often find that we're targeting like the middle market. We have a middle range product, but we provide fantastic levels of service because we think we can win our clients by, promising this amazing level of service, and our price is too low. And it's really difficult to grow and be really profitable if we take that approach. So you just have to make a choice. And I'm going to talk about, well, I'll move on to talk about the next bit before I share my story with you. But does that ring any bells? Excuse me, does that ring any bells with people? Does that sort of sound familiar, that, you may be targeting the middle market with a good product, but it's not a luxurious premium product. But your service levels are really great because that's how you keep your clients loyal, and the price may not be in line with that. That's certainly the experience that I've had. And I think you all have to make a choice about where you want to be and try to get those 4 areas aligned. So for me, when looking at my coaching business, I would say I'm the horizontal line across all 4 areas. That's what I'm attempting to be. So I'm targeting the middle market. My sweet spot market is SME agencies. I think my product is good, but I'm sure there are people that have a different, more premium product to me. I try to get my service levels good, but I try to be really clear with my clients about, obviously if someone's calling me now, I'm not answering the phone, so I'll get back to you within a certain amount of time. And I think my price is the mid price. I'm certainly not charging, £100 for a month or something, but I'm also not charging £10,000 a session, which, some people in my marketplace probably could. So my attempt is to be that horizontal line across all 4 areas. And if you're not, I can see no one's put anything in comments. So I would really encourage you to go away and think about this afterwards and work out where perhaps you have some weaknesses and you might want to realign. Because let's just talk now a little bit about how we differentiate our business. So a lot of people are not really clear about their positioning or about their niche. So what they do is they try to differentiate themselves based on 2 areas. And I just want to drill really quickly into these 2 areas. First of all, they try to differentiate on price. And that often means being cheaper than the competition. So if you're on a pitch, in a competitive pitch for a piece of work, and you're trying to differentiate yourself on price, you're probably not gonna win, and you're setting yourself up to fail. And the second area people try to differentiate themselves on is servicing. And for small businesses, this often means over servicing. And this is not a good way to differentiate yourself. So let's just look at why in a bit more detail. So first of all, if we differentiate ourselves on price, then that's fine if we're going for those down arrows across the board. And so if you're taking that sort of stack 'em high, sell 'em cheap approach, which is the old Tesco sort of mantra many, many years ago, so you're being the Lidl, not the Waitrose, then that's fine, but you've got to be aligned across the other areas as well. But for us small SMEs, the reason why this isn't good is because it devalues and commoditizes our offering. It sets the expectation that this is a low price and this is how it's always going to be. And when we really focus on pricing, it encourages our prospects to haggle us even lower on price. And because of all of this, we are in danger of becoming a charity. In other words, giving our work away for free. And I'm going to talk a little bit about pricing in the current climate, but I do not think, guys, that you should be really discounting massively on your work at the moment. There's other ways of changing your pricing, but not by just discounting a load. And the story I wanted to tell you is this true story. So I have a client who is a PR agency, and they just before all the craziness started, they just won a big US company, and it was due to start like on the 1st of April, and it was a 6-month initial project at say £3,000 a month. I don't know what the fee was. And because the MD was really nervous about them losing and saying, look, we're not going to start, she proactively went to them and said, look, what we're going to do is we're only going to charge you a third of the retainer fee, so £1,000 a month for the first 6 months. And then after month 6, when hopefully we've got back to normal, we're then going to go back up to the whole retainer fee. And I said to her, I think this is a really bad idea, because although you have it in your contract and you believe this is the way you're going to retain this client, they're going to get really used to you servicing them at this level for this price. And after 6 months, when you say, okay, we're now moving the price up here, but we're not changing the service level, they're not going to want that. Even if you had that conversation 6 months ago and it's in a contract, they're still not going to want to do it. So I felt that was a big mistake for them to do it. And it was almost like a panic reaction to the virus, and almost playing it forward of what she thought was going to happen when she didn't actually know. And if she had really focused on the value that she was selling the client and the pain that she was solving for that client, she wouldn't have needed to discount it at all. She might have changed things, which I'll talk about later, but she didn't need to differentiate, to change her pricing. So I thought that was a mistake, to change the pricing and discount the pricing before we'd even started. I think whenever you've had this conversation with a prospect where they say, look, give me a good deal now, and as we grow, we'll spend more money with you, is a load of baloney. I've heard that 100 times. I've had that told to me. I'm sure you've had it told to you. Just doesn't work. So I just don't believe that. If the client values what you do, they'll pay a fair fee for it. It's not you're trying to screw them, but they'll pay a fair fee. So that's why we shouldn't differentiate on price unless we are down arrow across the 4 areas. So the other one to think about is differentiating on service.
Sorry to interrupt you, Rob, I just wanted to flag, we've had a question about this, if you've seen competitors kind of already sort of discounting prices.
Oh, hang on a sec, I've lost you.
Sort of suggest to stay strong is in the chat from Squeak Marketing.
Okay, yeah. So do you know what? I'm sure I know I have a coach myself. I'm part of an American coaching program, and I know the answer they would say to me. They'd say, Rob, put your prices up. Go against what they're doing. I'm not suggesting you do that. I think what you need to do is really focus on value, not on price. So and I'll come on to I don't want to sort of defer the answer to that question, but I think I'm going to answer that question later on, because I think there are ways of changing our pricing right now, which we might want to do, but that isn't cutting our pricing. So I feel like, you know, if you buy something, it's why we should never do things for free, because if you do things for free, people put no value on them. So I think if other people are doing it in your sector, you've got to hold your nerve, and you've got to really apply all that we're talking about today, which is really understand your audience and understand the pain that you're solving for them, because if you solve their pain, they'll pay you for it. And so you have to get your messaging right to make sure that you are solving pains that they have and not just trying to sell them things that they may or not need. So I don't know whether that entirely answers your question, but personally, I wouldn't change my pricing because I'm seeing my competition do it. I would just really double down on value and make sure that my clients and my potential clients understand the value of what I do to them. And in order to do that, you have to understand them intimately well, and you have to understand. I'll just mention this now. I know I was going to say it somewhere further down the line in this presentation, but it's really, really important that you sell painkillers to your audience, not vitamin pills. And I always said that, but it's more important than ever right now that you sell painkillers. So what do I mean? Well, if I've got a headache and I came to you to say, look, I've got a headache, can you solve my headache? And you said, hey, Rob, what you really need is a multivit, because if you take a multivit, then it will build up your immune system and ultimately you won't have any headaches anymore. And I'm like, yeah, but I've got a splitting headache. What I need is a painkiller. And so I'm going to not buy the multivitamin. I'm going to go to someone who can sell me the painkiller. And I feel that what you all need to be doing right now is selling painkillers to your audience. And again, that means you need to really understand your audience really well so that you can do that. And I feel that's a really important point that I am talking a lot to people about. So I hope that answers the question a bit. So anyway, back to differentiating on service. So we all want to provide a great service to our clients, and we want to go the extra mile. But as I said, if we overpromise at the beginning, it sets you up to fail. Why is that? Well, sort of obvious, really. First of all, they've got an expectation of a certain service level, and they will always expect that, and that's what they'll see they've paid for, even if you are massively over servicing them to keep them. And of course, there is also a danger that we start over promising and under delivering, because if we do that with all our clients, we may not be able to sustain those levels of promised service. And there's another thing about that as well, is that if we start massively over servicing clients, then when we win new business, we can't provide the right level of service to these people, and we almost resent these people because we're having to sustain this huge level of service. And so there's a danger of losing clients and making losses because of that. So I think fundamentally differentiating yourself on pricing or service level isn't a good idea unless pricing is down arrow, or sorry, that you're down arrow across the 4 areas, or for service, you're premium. Now, if you're a premium product across the 4 areas, then you would expect a premium level of service, which means being available, to your audience 24 hours a day, being fairly instantaneous at dealing with client inquiries. But you better make sure you're charging the fees connected with that. Otherwise, you're just in danger of being a busy, crazy fool and making a loss and not enjoying the journey and all the rest of it. So I've said why it's really important that we understand our clients at the moment, because then we can talk about the value that we bring, and we can also make sure that we are providing a painkiller to them and not a vitamin pill. So hopefully now we've worked out our niche, now we've worked out our alignment, now we can start thinking about the customers. And the thing about this is that you can't really start delivering great value to your clients if you don't really understand them. I mean, how can you understand what painkillers they need if you don't understand them really well? And you need to make sure that all of your external communications speak the language of your client. It is a massive bugbear of mine that so many websites, homepages start off by saying, we do this and we do that. We are an SEO company and we can help you get on page 1 of Google. We are a web design company. We build beautiful websites. We are a PR company and we can help you get in the press. That's just completely wrong, because someone's reading it going, well, I don't really care because I don't know whether you can help me, your potential audience. So we've got to make sure that our communications speak our customers' language. I just started doing some work recently with someone who is a coach. I've never coached a coach before, which could be fatal. And I said to him, the proviso of me taking you on is you speak English, because he's got a psychology degree and a this degree and that degree, and he was speaking gobbledygook to me. And I know full well that his audience doesn't care about his gobbledygook. They care about English. They care about what he can do for them. Yeah, if you don't understand your customer, then you can't do any of this stuff. So you've got to be able to speak their language. And if you can speak their language, then you can be empathetic. You can stand in their shoes, see the world from their perspective. You can understand their issues, their challenges, and their pain points, and your marketing and sales and language and the elevator pitch and networking speak and all the rest of it will speak to these issues, challenges, and pain points that they have. And that means that consequently you can build empathy and credibility quickly with these target audience, and you can create compelling marketing messages. Now, if you've heard of this idea of a customer avatar or a customer persona before, I would really encourage you to go and do this piece of work. And one of the workbooks that I've put on the page at the end of today is taking you a step-by-step process of how to go about defining your ideal target customer or your customer persona or your customer avatar. And I would really, really encourage you to do this piece of work. We're all going to have sort of 3, maybe 4 maximum customer avatars. And these what they do is they kind of give some physicality to an abstract concept of a target customer. So you'll, as part of this process, you're going to work out, what does a day in a life for them look like? What are their interests? What are their challenges that they have every day? How do they go about gathering information? What are their objections that they might have to buying my product or service? And what you're going to come up with is like, I don't know, Mark, the marketing manager, and Helen, the HR manager, or whoever the first point of contact that you typically liaise within your target customer. That is who you're trying to define. And as I say, the workbook I'm providing is going to take you a step-by-step process. But you should really do this. I have 3 customer avatars that I've had for years, and they serve me really well. So I have David. He is the CEO of a large SME agency. I have Jane. She is the owner manager of a small growing agency. And then I've got Pete, and he is the solopreneur, one-man band, digital person. And it's really clear that the challenges that they have are all different to each other. So if I was just producing sales and marketing messages that try to appeal to all of them, then I'd end up appealing to nobody, because what Pete, the one-man band, cares about is very different to what keeps David, the CEO of a 50-man agency, awake at night. But if I think about who I'm talking to when I'm writing a blog or a podcast or whatever, then I can think about, okay, he's sitting opposite me or she's sitting opposite me. What are the issues that they have? And this is why this is really powerful and it really works. About 3 websites ago, the website agency I was working with took me through this process. And at the time, I thought it was a bit sort of, naff and sort of marketing. I'm trying to not swear here, marketing rubbish. But actually, it's been really powerful for me. So I really would encourage you to do the same thing. Okay, now if you've done that, then you will now understand your niche, you'll understand your positioning, you'll understand your target client, and now we can really start to think about communicating value. And the next slide I've got is probably the most important slide in this deck, so I want to make sure that you understand this. So I just want to speak you through this from left to right. So we sell 4 things when we provide our product or our service to our audience. So on the left-hand side is the work that you do, and on the right-hand side are the results or the outcomes of the work that you do. So if we start with the yellow box and work from left to right, the inputs are the tasks and the resources that you need to do to deliver a piece of work. So if you're a web design company, then the inputs would be things like an outline spec, discussions around wireframes, looking at what resources you need, and producing a timeline for that work. Those are the inputs that you need. The inputs, if you're a PR agency, might be like a brief from a client, maybe a quotation that you're going to include from a spokesperson, an outline of the press release or whatever it is that you're doing, and the resources, the people that need and the time. So those are the inputs, and I think we all get that. This is what we work out internally in our agency. Then the orange box are the outputs. And the outputs are what we communicate with the client. So the outputs, if you're a web company, might be the initial designs, example pages, layouts, wireframes, and so on. The outputs for this PR project might be a draft press release. It might be a press meeting itinerary. It might be some briefing notes for the client. So these are the outputs. And the issue here is that most people sell on outputs. So if you go on a website, you'll see that people talk about doing website design, or they talk about running a press office for a client, or they talk about running a PPC campaign. But the disconnect is the client doesn't really care about that. The client cares about the green and the blue box, so the stuff on the right-hand side. So the outcomes are the net result of the intervention that they've hired you for. So if you're a web design company, the outcomes of a new website might be, a much better representation of their brand, a modern looking website that reflects who they are today. It might be that they start to generate more leads and they get more traffic to the website. And an outcome for a PR campaign might be that they've achieved coverage in their top tier 1 media. So that's starting to focus a bit more on what the client cares about. But the blue box is the ultimate thing. So the blue box is the ultimate impact of that intervention over time. So it's the impact that we want to achieve by hiring you to design a new website for us or hiring you to run this PR campaign. So if it's a website that you've done, the ultimate impact might be that we're on page 1, that we get regular inbound inquiries, and that we are generating more revenue. That's quite simply what the overall impact is from the web design project. And if it was a PR campaign, the impact might be that we have launched this new product and no one knew about us, but now we're seen as a top 3 player in that space. We're generating more sales and we have successfully launched that product. So that's the impact. Now we have to make sure that we talk from right to left when we meet our clients, not from left to right. So what that means, if you're going to a prospect meeting or having a phone conversation with somebody, as you're more likely to do at the moment, you have to start by asking them what's the impact of what you're trying to achieve. And they may not know, so you might have to be very consultative at this stage and ask them the right questions to help them think about the impact, because they might be coming at it from a very kind of tactical, commoditized place of we just need a 5-page WordPress website. And if that's the case, then those people that someone mentioned earlier about discounting their prices, suddenly we're in a bun fight of commoditized services. Whereas if we are actually being more consultative and saying to our client, okay, what's the impact you're trying to achieve from this? Before we talk about a 5-page website, let me understand what is it you're trying to achieve. And we ask them those questions. And then the green box kind of questions would be, what does success look like for you in this campaign? And who else in your organization will be involved in this, and how else will they judge success? And then we start talking about the outputs of what we're going to do. And then lastly, we talk about the inputs. So you really need to make sure you start from the right and move to the left, and that you don't start from the left and move to the right. And so that looks like asking the right questions from the very first conversations you have right the way through the sales process to closing the deal. And if you do that, you're positioning yourself as being very consultative from the beginning, which means that you end up having a more partner-partner relationship with your clients, which means more respectful and appreciative than this imbalanced kind of customer-supplier relationship. I can just hear that the chat's pinging, so let me just see what someone has said. Okay, so that's okay, great, good, Ben. I'm glad that's really useful. I would say, guys, this, as I said, this slide is the most important slide in this presentation, and it's the thing I feel like most people get wrong. And I think too many people focus on that orange box, and that just commoditizes them, and it makes you look like everybody else. And most of us operate in a fairly busy market space. If you're a coach, there's 101 coaches. If you're a WordPress developer, there's 101 WordPress developers. If you're a PR company, if you're an SEO, whatever it is, there's 101 people doing it. And if you think you have no competition, then you're probably gonna not be successful. We've all got competition. So the question is, how do we differentiate ourselves? And one of the ways you can do this is by using this and asking yourself, what's the impact that I'm creating for my clients? What's the outcomes that they want? Okay, what are the outputs of what I'm going to do to deliver those things? And then finally, what inputs do I need? And then just another sort of side point here that's worth thinking about is that every customer, no matter what they're buying, whether it's a bottle of water, a painkiller, or a website, or a coach, or a PR campaign, it doesn't matter what they're buying, everybody is buying a transformation. And they're buying a transformation from being in pain to not being in pain. And your job is to identify what that transformation is. So if I'm buying a bottle of water, the transformation is I'm thirsty, I'm no longer thirsty. If I'm buying a cup of coffee, the transformation is I need my caffeine, I'm not awake, so I'm alert and awake and ready to go. So we've got to work out, and obviously if I'm buying a painkiller, it's literally I've got a headache to I've not got a headache. So we've got to work out what that transformation is. My website's really crap. It doesn't represent my brand. It generates no leads. I'm embarrassed by it. I love my website. I'm super proud of it. We're generating loads of traffic and loads of leads. That's the transformation. So I think part of your questioning in the early process of meeting prospects and understanding what they want is to be consultative and ask these questions. Now, you're not going to ask the question, what transformation are you looking for? But you need to get the answer to that by asking the right questions. So I hope that's clear. Just think everybody is buying a transformation. What is it they're looking for? if you can identify the transformation, you're really starting to hit the kind of sweet spot that will mean they'll pick you over someone else, because you are really talking their language and you are really empathizing with the issues they have, and you're identifying that transformation. And if you can help deliver that transformation, they're going to love you and they're going to really appreciate you, and they're not going to argue over price. If I had a really, really splitting migraine and someone offered you, well, actually, let me tell you a better story about this. So last summer, I woke up, I had really bad toothache, and it was a Saturday, and by Saturday night I was in agony. I don't know if any of you had toothache, it's awful. And I couldn't get an emergency appointment on Sunday, and got an emergency appointment Monday morning, and I've been 2 sleepless nights in agony, sat in the dentist chair, and they said, you've got an infection, we need to take your tooth out, because it was my very back tooth. And I like, just do it. And they took my tooth out. It was really quick, it was pain-free, and almost immediately the pain went. I went to reception and they said, whatever, that's £300, please. And I did not say, that's a lot of money for 20 minutes work. Because if I did, they would turn around to me and say, well, if we took 4 hours to get rid of your pain and charge you £300, would that make it more valuable? And of course it wouldn't, because of the transformation I needed was literally being in pain to not being in pain. And nowhere in that was I talking about time. And we shouldn't be talking about time when we're selling. Of course, we talk about time in terms of project lengths, but we shouldn't talk about time when we're selling our services. So we should never be selling by the hour, because an hour is just a commodity. And and there's so many things wrong with this that I don't really have time to go into it today, but there's so many things wrong with selling time. Even selling fixed project fees, really, it is challenging. We need to use this value pricing and value selling approach, which is applying everything that I've spoken about, so that clients never ask us about, well, what's your hourly rate? Because that what happens then is we sell hours, and people start looking at your reports and go, oh, why did that logo take 2 hours? Like they're an expert. Well, they're not an expert, because that's why they've hired you. So where possible, don't talk about time with clients. You've got to give a timeline, that's something different, but don't talk about the component parts. And how long internally you need to work on time, because you need to work out how long things will take to get your pricing right, but externally avoid it at all costs. And I know that sometimes if you're working in public sector and there's procurement teams, they want breakdowns of time, and it's difficult to get away from that. But by and large, we shouldn't be selling time, because clients not buying time. There's nowhere in this transformation is time part of that discussion. So that slide really important, and I would print this off and just look at those 4 areas and work out how you can get your messaging right across those 4 boxes, so that you can communicate in a way that will resonate. If you get this right on your website, and your website's leading with outcomes and impacts, and your website's showing your audience that you really understand the pain points they have, then when your ideal target customer is reading your website, they're going to go, blimey, how did they know that? So I sent out, and I could do this much better myself, but I sent out an email a while ago, and someone replied to the email going, Rob, absolutely everything you've just identified, it was all about managing staff. And they said, everything you've identified in your email is going on for me at the moment. Can we talk? And they became a client of mine. And that's not because I'm some smart ass genius marketeer. It's just that I understand my audience. So I know that this is going on for a lot of my clients. And that's what we want to do. We need to speak to our audience, which is why having a clear niche and an ideal target customer is so important. Okay.
Rob, before you move on, and we've had a couple of questions in the chat about challenges of getting customers to actually focus on their kind of the outcomes that they're looking to achieve, and kind of getting fixated on those kind of commodities that you called. Do you have any tips for how to kind of weed that information out to conversations? Do you use qualifying questions, for example?
Yeah, I think you've got to start off by, what I think is that if a client's being like that, you're setting yourself up for problems. And I think in an ideal world, and I know we're far from an ideal world at the moment, your best clients are going to be the ones that get you, that will answer these questions. So I think you need to have a set of questions that you use as part of the early prospecting meetings that you have with clients, which will be big open questions. So tell me what it is you're trying to achieve. Tell me why is now a good time to be doing this project, which is a brilliant question to ask, because it tells you so much. Like if you ask someone why is now a good time for this project, and they said, oh, we're just considering our options, then you know that they're not very well qualified. But if you said, look, our website's just not working for us and we need to do something about it, then you know they're in pain, and then you dig deeper into identifying that pain. So I totally get that sometimes clients are really focused on the commodity piece of it. You've got to be consultative and pull them back. If you don't understand how they will judge success in this project, which is the outcomes piece, you are definitely setting yourself up for problems. Especially if you're just talking to, you know, little Jimmy who's been told by the CEO to go and get some quotes for a new website. You need to know how is the CEO going to judge this? So, so that's interesting what Squeak Marketing said. This is exactly the opposite of what I've been told previously. I've even been advised to include how many hours is in the project I'm proposing to demonstrate why it'll cost what I'm charging. Well, I'm sure, you know, I'm sure that is, well, I don't know who's told you that. I totally don't agree with that. I think I can just share with you so many problems that creates by people going through your timeline and questioning it as though they are an expert, and that an hour suddenly just becomes a commodity because they can say, look, we really like, I mean, I'll tell you my very first client I ever won. I went to this client and I said, I charge a day rate. As a coach, I said, I charge a day rate. And they came back to me and they said, Rob, we really like you, but we've met another coach. His day rate's 200 quid less than yours. If you can match his day rate, we'll take you on. So what choice did I have? I either matched his day rate and won my first client, and I had to discount, or I didn't. And or I didn't take them on. So of course I discounted my service and I won my first client. And I learned then that pricing on time is a really bad idea because it just commoditizes me against this other coach or against the competition, instead of actually comparing the value that I would bring to the value that, you know, compared to the competition. So it's like they're measuring me on the wrong things, because time is a commodity. So I think you shouldn't be. Don't get me wrong here, we have to give project timelines, but if you give a breakdown of everything that you're doing by time, it just opens a big can of worms, because you are the expert. That's why they're employing you, but it then makes them become the experts, and they can start questioning everything. And they can start pushing you down and saying, I don't understand why it's going to take you 4 hours to do this logo design. Like they know. So I feel like that is a really dangerous approach to be. And I know it's the easy approach, and I know what I'm suggesting is a less easy approach, but it is the right approach. So George said, I think creativity can be intangible for a lot of clients. They want to understand how you arrive at the price. I think they care more about the delivery and the outcomes. I mean, you know, when I went to the dentist, did I say, can you give me a breakdown of what you're going to do for £300? Can you tell me how much injection you're going to put in me, and what tools you're going to use to pull my teeth out? No, of course I didn't. I just cared about them getting rid of my pain. I feel like if you can identify the pain in the very early conversations that you are having with your client, it becomes easier to sell to them based on talking about that pain. And you have to give them a timeline of what you're going to deliver when. I'm not saying that, but giving them a breakdown to justify your pricing, I don't think is the right approach. And I appreciate other people have different views. This is just my own personal experience and the experience I've had with working with hundreds of agencies, that when clients move away from this, they end up charging higher fees. They end up having more respectful relationships with their clients. So, you know, what I would say to you guys is that if you're very much stuck in the time space at the moment, the next time you write a proposal for a client, just look at what it would look like to take a little step. If I'm talking about Z, which is the panacea of never talking about time, and you're at A, what would B look like? So what would that one step to give slightly less focus on the time, which is the left boxes, and focus more on the outcome that the client's delivering? And like I say, if you're having this conversation right at the beginning and they're really resistant about you know, talking about outcomes with you, or what the pain is, you can't identify, then you have to make a choice. Do I want to take this client on because I can just earn some money from it, or am I going to have loads of problems further down the line? Because I feel like I feel, well, so yeah, I can see the question. So as an agency, how do you move to this? Clients are expecting to see day rates. And see, one thing I would say, whoever Squeak Marketing is that you're stating this as a fact. It's not, it's your experience. I have lots of clients that do retainers for their clients, but they don't talk day rates. They say, we are charging you a fee of £4,000 a month. This is what's in the scope of the work that we're going to do. We're going to agree with you each month what we're focusing on this month. And because they have this partner-partner relationship, there's trust there that they're not, the client isn't screwing the customer, and they just let them get on with it. And if they need to make changes during the month because of things that are happening, then they do that. So I think you can absolutely have a retainer that is a fixed fee per month, which is ultimately what everybody wants. And you talk about the scope of work, and yeah, I mean, clients are hard to come by. And my experience is that we, unfortunately, have moved more away from the retainer model to the project-based model, or maybe the hybrid model, which is really a retainer model, but it's like a 6-month project. But it's how I don't charge day rates to my clients. I charge a fixed fee, and I talk about scope of work in that. So how many interactions I'm going to have with the client, how I provide email and phone support between our sessions. I don't have day rates. I don't have time with my clients. I don't measure the time because I'm focused on the outcomes and the value. So like I said, guys, I think the thing about this is I'm talking about my ultimate belief, which is point Z. And if you're at A, think about what B would look like. So is it better to sell a package? Not in terms of like gold, silver and bronze, no, because that commoditizes us. It's better to listen to the client, understand their pains, put together an offer from you based on their pain points and put a price to that offer. That's how I would go about doing it. So you're not, I mean, this is a whole conversation I know we could spend the next 2 hours on. And I'm really happy to pick this up offline with people if you want to drop me an email afterwards, and I'll try and give you some more specific advice about your situation. But yeah, I think you need to, the key thing is listen to the client, identify the pain points, understand what they're trying to achieve from the outcomes, build a solution that delivers those outcomes, work out how long that's going to take you, and then build a price into that. And that's a monthly fee. So I don't know how you want to call that, whether it's a package or a retainer or a project. It doesn't really matter. It's just the process is to listen to the client, understand the pain that they're in, the thing that they're trying to solve, keep digging deeper till you get to that. Even if they're being like saying, we want a 5-page website, I'd be going, well, why do you want to change your website? What is it your current website's not doing? What is it you hope your new website will do? Who's your target customer? I'd be asking lots of big open questions so that you can get to the point of understanding what they truly want. And I totally get that a lot of the time we meet prospects and they don't know what they want. So it's our job to be a bit consultative and ask them those questions. I think the really key thing here is that the more consultative we are from day one and all the way through the sales process, the easier it is to have an equal relationship with your partner, with your client, where you can push back if necessary, and they will respect you because they know you have their best interests at heart. Okay, I'm going to move on, otherwise we're going to go massively over time. So I feel like with the summary of the value pricing and value selling, what you have to do is match your service or your product against the client's pain points. And again, if we understand our clients, we can do that generally. You need to price on delivering that transformation, not on time. And then you need to have measures in place so that you can measure against the outcome and the transformation so that you can easily communicate the value to your clients. And I get that last point is challenging, especially if you're in, for example, PR, where it's very difficult to measure. But again, a whole different conversation. But ultimately, that is what we need to do. Match your product to the client's pain points, price on the transformation, not on time, and then measure over time the outcomes of what you are doing for your clients so that you can communicate that value back so that they will always appreciate you and want you to do more work with them. That's what ultimately we're trying to achieve. Okay, so I've only got a few more slides to go, but I wanted to spend a bit of time talking about serving our clients in the current situation that we're in. I feel it would be kind of a bit falling on deaf ears if I didn't talk a bit about that. And one question that I'm constantly being asked by my clients at the moment is, should I be marketing and selling to my clients right now? I feel a bit awkward or I feel I feel like it would be a bit insensitive to be doing that. And the answer is a resounding yes, you should be, but with a couple of caveats. So first of all, you need to make sure that you're talking to your audience more than ever right now, and you need to be a really good listener, so that you are listening to them and finding out what they need right now and what their pain points are right now that you can serve. And then you need to brainstorm internally or with yourself or whoever around how you might need to alter your communications to serve those that your audience right now. And I feel like, like me, I'm sure you've had clients that have stopped working with you or put things on pause, but I still feel like we should be trying to serve those people, not by giving away work for free, but just by communicating with them, so that when times get to some sense of normality again, we can actually, they haven't forgotten us and we can re-engage with them. I always say to my audience that every time I talk to a client, I've refilled the sand timer. And what I need to make sure I'm doing is communicating with them again before the sand timer runs out to refill it. Otherwise, they've forgotten about me. So that might be every month, every 3 months, whatever it is. But we can't assume that because we communicated with someone 4 months ago, they will remember us. We need to keep communicating. So if you've got clients that have put things on pause, what value can you provide them? Even if it's like sharing a good, some useful information, or I don't know, just finding reasons why you should be communicating with them. One of the things I've been doing is creating really sort of down and dirty 5-minute videos every week that I've been sending out to my clients and my clients that have stopped working with me and past clients. It's just a great way of staying in touch with them, and it's really quick for me to do. So have a think about how you can keep serving your audience. And if you need to change things slightly, and I'll talk about pivoting in a minute, as I've said before, I don't think we should be discounting massively, but we should be thinking about changing our price points, or if we want to offer more value, do provide them with more value, but don't sort of cut your fees. As I told you about my client that cut their fees, I don't believe personally that's the right thing. And of course, we need to be willing to pivot if we have to, and I'm going to talk about that next. And I think the other thing that we need to make sure our clients are doing, and I know this is easier said than done, is we need to encourage our clients to have a half an eye on the future and not just be focused on the now and focused in survival mode, because we will come out of this and the world will get back to some sense of normality and commerce will keep moving and people will need our services. And we need to make sure that our clients are prepared for that so that they can take as much advantage and opportunity when that arises as you can. So we need to encourage our clients to be thinking about the future. That's certainly something I'm doing with my clients. So talking about pivoting, let's just spend a few things. So your old niche or your old approach or your old service levels may not work in the current climate. So for example, if you work in travel, then clearly you can't just keep saying, okay, my niche is travel and I'm going to keep trying to sell holidays to people in travel, because it's not going to work. So you need to consider how you might pivot. And as far as I can see it, we can pivot in one of three ways. So first of all, we can pivot in the message that we give. So the messages that we're putting out through our sales and marketing, the way we're engaging with our audience, we can change our messaging. And I've certainly been doing that to support my clients through this. I've been changing my messaging. We can pivot on the offer that we give our clients. So I feel like at the moment, a lot of us need to think about micro offers rather than macro offers. So what does that look like by providing smaller services to our clients that are easier for our clients to digest and to take on board? Whereas before, for example, someone might have bought a whole web redesign and a SEO package from us, where now, they may not do that. So we may say, okay, what we're going to do is a refresh of your 3 pages of your website or whatever, so that we providing a kind of a smaller offering that we can still sell to people, that doesn't feel like we're trying to sell a £60,000 web redesign when the client's kind of saying, I don't have a lot of money at the moment, but you're still helping them identify that they still need to win new prospects that are out there, and the website's an integral part of that. So think about how you pivot your offer, whether you need to create smaller offerings. And finally, you need to think about whether you pivot your pricing. And obviously, I don't think discounting is the way forward, but offering new pricing offers, for example. So I recently launched my 2020 Agency Accelerator, which is my group coaching program. And for months, it had been scheduled to launch on the 24th of March. Some of you might have got communication from me. I was bombarding my list for a week while the doors were open. And one of the things I did with that, because I was like, God, this is terrible timing. Should I even do this? But I went ahead with it. And one of the things I did was offer longer payment terms. So normally you pay 1 payment or 3 payments. Well, I offered a 6 payment term, and I also offered some additional value if they joined the program. So I wasn't discounting it, but I offered some additional value. So think about how you might want to change your pricing, longer payment terms, I don't know, to make it more palatable. So I feel like if you need to pivot at the moment, those are the 3 areas you should look at: your messages that you put out there that are empathetic and sensitive and providing value, your offering, whether you need to change your offering, and finally your pricing, how you need to change your pricing. Okay, so that is it. And we have a few minutes. So has anybody got any questions that they would like to ask before I give you the link to the page? Just give us a few moments. I'm just putting my email address in the my email address in there. So if anybody's got anything specific, I'm really happy in terms of my wanting to serve my audience. I'm really happy to hear from you specifically, because I appreciate that it's difficult in a group session like this to answer everybody's specific questions and specific challenges. And just remember, like I said, I firmly believe that value pricing and value selling is the right thing to do. It builds much better, sustainable relationships. I've seen that time and time again. But I also appreciate you might be at point A. So what I take away from this is, how do I move to point B? What does that look like? How do I just start slightly shifting my conversation with my prospects or with my clients so that I'm focusing a bit more on value? What is the questions I need to ask to really identify the outcomes? How do I keep pushing back on a client to get to that point of really understanding what they're trying to achieve, even if they don't seem to understand it themselves? How can I help them understand it themselves? So I put my email address there, so please feel free to drop me an email, and I'm just going to give you the link now to the web page. So if you go to dacostacoaching.co.uk/wired Sussex, then you'll land on this page where there's a copy of the slides, there's a copy of a guide on niching that goes into what I've talked about today in a lot more detail. There's a book on value pricing and value selling, which again goes into what I've talked about in more detail. And also there's a step-by-step guide on creating your customer personas. And actually I've put a link to my podcast, which comes out tomorrow, which is all of my one podcast on the current situation. So it's my advice on surviving and thriving. So again, it talks more than I've talked about today. So have a listen to that as well. And please do feel free to drop me an email if any specific questions, and I will get back to you. And my goal with these things, and I think this is what I hope you take away from it, is that if everybody leaves an event like this thinking about their business in one different way, or with one thing they're going to do differently, then I've won, I've succeeded. That's what I want for you. And so I sort of challenge you to think about how you can make some of this stuff work for you, as opposed to why it won't work for you. And I know that's a bit of a mindset shift, but just think about what could you do that would have an impact on your agency slightly, as opposed to sort of being totally resistant to think that I can't make this work. You don't understand, my clients aren't like this, because everybody thinks we're unique, but we're not really. So anyway, I'm done. So thanks so much for coming.